SIGCHI released a progressive web app for conference program schedules on mobile devices as well as desktop and laptop computers. This app allows you to browse the program, see what people are there, look at awards, and also add stuff to one's own custom schedule, papers and talks they might want to see, even make notes. We have a fair bit of infrastructure on automatically importing all this information through a system called QOALA, which this video is intended to give you a quick walkthrough through. But we need to start with PCS. Now, Persistent Conference is the main content management system that we use inside of SIGCHI. And there's a couple of settings here that you'll have to set, or your technical chairs or program chairs will have to set. Around general settings, around organizing sessions, and around the forms. So if we start with general settings, I'm just going to switch tabs just to make it a little bit easier. There's a lot of information here about dates and who the papers chairs are, and I was a papers chair for 2019 for CSCW, and that's why I have access to all this here. If you scroll to the bottom, you'll see API access. You'll need to check these two checkboxes for Conda Test and ACM SIGCHI. This allows all the programmatic connections into PCS for QOALA. Now, if you go back, we also need to go to organizing sessions down here at the bottom of the page under actions. And in organizing sessions, we see again, a lot of information around sessions that we set up externally outside of PCS and added them in here. But if you go to edit sessions or edit settings, you'll see a master track. And the master track is basically the sort of central command for QOALA. Now what this means is you might have other tracks, demos, posters, panels, workshops even, a bunch of things come together inside of PCS to make a whole conference, and they're all managed separately. If you notice, they all will have a sort of, in the URL up the top, they'll have the short name of the conference and then a letter, A, B, C, D, and so forth for each of the tracks that are added to this whole conference as a collection. You need to pick a master track. Generally, it's going to be papers. But it could be anything. It could have been demos or posters for this example. And this basically tells the QOALA system where to go first, and then it can sort of spider out and get all the other accepted content from the program. The last thing you have to do is also under forms here under settings. And the forms are very important because in the camera ready form, if you scroll to the very bottom, you can put this anywhere actually in the camera ready form, but an author cannot edit flag hidden from the author, the reviewer, the 2AC, and the 1AC. So basically only the technical papers chairs have access to this. You need to set up a field called award and give it these two names of best paper and honorable mention. And this allows QOALA to automatically flag the submissions that have received these awards in compliance with ACM standards of 1% and 5% of the submissions. And so that will be set up for all your papers for your camera ready form. And that's all the PCS settings one needs. And then we can go to QOALA. So if you go to services.sigchi.org/QOALA, it's the URL, you'll need to log in at the top here, use your ACM login, and technically the VP of conferences for SIGCHI will set someone as the main admin here, and others, whoever's that main admin can then log in and take control and set other people as they need to be. So here's CSCW 2019. We're going to use this as our working example. We ran the beta test for this, so it's been sort of flushed out and understood. So when you log into QOALA, you'll get actually more of a blank thing. Again, these are all filled out, but I'm just going to walk you through them. So place for a logo, conference, drop down here, you can pick your conference. It's all set up. the sort of long name of the conference, the dates, where it is, time zone of the conference, and then the URL for the main conference landing. Over here are conference editors. These can be anybody with an ACM username or email. So you can add or remove people as you need to be. They will need an ACM account. That's a free account that can be set up. And then there's conference settings. We set a duration here for example, workshops are on the 9th and 10th, where the main conference was 11 to 13. And then sponsors here, you can add sponsors to the conference by giving it a name, adding a logo. You can set custom sponsor levels as well as you like. Okay, cancel this, delete this because I don't want to add that. Now each tab up at the top here, sort of you walk through linearly, and I just walked you through basically the general data tab, the sponsors and other information. Each tab also has a little instructions tab, a little like pop-up underneath it, which can also explain things to you in more details. For example, a lot of the information might be read-only. You can contact the VP of conferences here if you need something set on the general page, conference chairs, sections, and sponsors, and so forth. It's a very lightweight kind of manual. One thing I want to point out is currently QOALA does not allow concurrent edits. So if you have 2 people or more people with access to the system, they can overwrite each other, and then that's going to be bad. So currently, pick a sort of driver or lead person, or have 2 people pass a conch or some other semaphore mechanism to know that they are taking control over the next set of writes. In this example here, I did all the work for editing. Eric was monitoring as the general chair. Second tab is time slots. And here we have like workshop days, which are sort of full days, and you can sort of add time slots as you need to be on each of the days. Workshop days is full day, 9 to 5, just kind of blanket it out. Same thing on the second day, except for from 5:30 to 6:30 we had a reception, so we can call that whatever we like. And you can add more time slots or give them any internal comment that you want to call it. These are not printed anywhere. The main conference, we had sort of sessions set up from 9:30 to 10, from 9 to 10:30. Keynote on the main day, morning coffee. We can actually mark that as a break or a lunch if we want, and then the sessions and so forth. Here's a night event. We had a poster session here from 6:30 to 8:30. Posters and demos, just marked under sessions. Next day, there's no keynote in the morning, but it just goes through the sessions as well to the end. Again, the instructions tab here gives you some useful hints and other things. Third tab is rooms, and you have to contact your event center or hotel to get a basic room inventory. You can add rooms and flag them for what their purpose is. For example, meeting room 614 was only for workshops. It's a classroom-like setting, 56 people, whereas our plenary was salon C, D, and E, and we can set a capacity and so forth. You can set a little note here. This room 4112 was also used for workshops, so I kind of set that over here just to remind us that this room is overloaded from any of the event types that you can add. I could have added paper and workshop as well. I think I left it as papers just for convenience, but again, instructions on every page. Maps. Maps are kind of a funny thing. Generally, there are graphical maps for venues and room assignments to say like this room is on this floor. Some people like the maps. Most people, I don't know, even use them. It's something we need to look at and see if it's actually a feature that's in use. Personally, I never use these maps. I usually just ask a student volunteer if I need to find something, but that's here as well. And your venue can generally get you these maps. Now the content is the meat and potatoes of the whole situation. You know, this is where we want to put together all of our sessions and put together all our schedules and so forth. And the master track ID, as I told you earlier, comes in here and we set to CSCW 19A, which is that master track. If you look over here now, CSCW 19A is here. I can refresh the content. So if something changes in PCS, title, some awards move around, or someone gets added to an award, or so forth, and abstract changes, you can just refresh that content here. You make the change in PCS, refreshes here. Sessions do not get altered, just the content of the paper itself. Because this was the master track, we see posters and demos came in on 19B and 19C, and that's pretty cool. Now, there's all these other tracks here that I added, and those are added through spreadsheets, because not everything comes from PCS. Sometimes, like panels in particular, they just have an open email, or the doctoral consortium. There's a lot of invited talks and other things that just don't quite fit into the PCS flow. And for that, there's a manual import of spreadsheets. So I'm going to take a quick aside and explain this to you. And if this page loads, there we go. I set up a Google Doc. Any CSV generating software will do this, Numbers or Excel or as you like. And if you basically on each of these pages, you can see a download for the templates. And I just added them to one spreadsheet here in Google Docs with 3 tabs. And the way this works is you sort of just list it out. Content ID, you make that sequential. Here's a title. Here's an abstract. It's pretty long. You set a track ID. This can be any unique number that you want to collect things together with, and then some person IDs. Now, these 5 papers were journal papers coming from Tokai and other places that were being presented at the conference, so we needed to add them. Here we go for number 3 here. These are our 2 keynotes, which we also got added as track ID number 3, and so forth. So each time a doctoral consortium or workshop or anything else that came in needs to be put on the schedule, we add it here. So if we look at this first submission here, content ID on track 2, content ID 1, person's ID are 1 and 2. So on the people table, you actually have to match that. So this is the 1 and 2 person IDs, and you list that out, email address and the people. And then on the 3rd tab here is affiliations, and you see here you match a content ID to a person ID and an institution. Now look at this, person actually had 2 different institutions. One said School of Interactive Computing, the other was just listed as Georgia Tech on content ID 26. That's fine. A lot of times people may have 1 or 2 or more different affiliations from actually different places that they may be juggling, which is why each content ID and each person ID is sort of separated out here in the affiliations table. There are some gotchas. You don't want to duplicate anybody in the people list. You want everybody just to have 1 entry there, and then you can list as many affiliations as someone might have for the affiliations table. And the content table here kind of encapsulates all of that into one large lookup. So you add these spreadsheets here. In Google Sheets, I just export each one as a CSV and drag them over and then update. And then down here at the bottom, there's a little validation script that will tell you if there's any errors with an issue. For example, there is some content authors are missing on the diversity lunch, because this was sort of added as a placeholder for a lot of content during the lunch. But that's nice. You get a little validation to make sure your spreadsheets were okay or not. It'll flag errors for you down the road. But most of your main content comes in through PCS quite nicely. So moving on to Session Builder, QOALA actually has some provisions for manually making sessions. You can sort of easily double click and make a new session. You can give it a title, add chairs to it, drag in content, but for the most part, let me delete this one. Actually, let me leave it here. Let me call this test session. And see if I can add myself as a chair. There I am. It'll look up from the CSV or the PCS for authors as you add them in here. Here's another session, for example, for a workshop. Here's a session for papers. You can drag and drop things around in the papers as you like if you want to make an edit or so forth. And again, these sessions were imported from PCS. We didn't actually design them here in QOALA. We used PCS, then they just get imported over. Now there are things that aren't sessions, and these include lunches, welcome meetups, and so forth. Registration, even we set up as an event so people knew where they were. We have a private event here. We had an AC lunch, which we wanted to keep on schedule, but we don't want propagating to the program, so you can set up private events as well. And then here's, of course, the diversity and inclusion lunch with the chairs and organizers and all the presenters listed in. Listed in detail. The thing about adding them here like this is that they'll come up in search. So if somebody searches for Muhammad Ali, they'll come up in the search box in the Progressive Web app, which is why you want to add as much information here as possible. There's also a banquet, town hall, and so forth. Now the next tab is the grid, and this is where a lot of people will spend a lot of time. And this is basically setting up all the program across all the rooms. And so you're gonna probably need a bigger monitor for this because it just takes a lot of space. We're working on improving the UI here so that hopefully we can get more screen real estate captured for you. You'll notice here there's the test session we made. It's unscheduled. Which is nice, but you can just sort of drag it to wherever you want to drag it. And let's see if I can actually put it somewhere. So it's not supposed to, this is a meeting room for workshops, but we just moved over here. It works out okay. If I were to, let's see here. Where's the moderation? If I want to find main conference day here. Oops. I think there was a, let me put this back. So I want to find a session I was in. It was called the meta session. So I can go over to the search box, see CW meta. It'll jump right here, highlighting it for me. And this is a panel that has a lot of people in it talking about sort of meta conversations around CCW and its processes. I'm going to put this test session in room 404 right next to it. And now you notice it's actually found an error here. It's found some hard conflicts, which says exactly that I'm a chair for the test session and also I'm doing something in CCW meta. So that is sort of the flag you get to know that you can't put these two things together because the person needs to be in two places at once, and that's a hard conflict. Because if I drag it, somewhere else, then the conflicts go away. So this is nice because these errors will propagate as you move the schedule around. Now there is a feature that's still in the works over here under schedule actions, and this will auto schedule the best it can. So what that means is from our sessions, and we could jump back to tab number 6. From the sessions that are here, and get rid of this, I'll leave this here for now just because it's serving some purpose. But from these sessions here, auto schedule will sort of take a very naive, greedy algorithm to try and fit everything into the grid. It worked pretty well for me, making CCW, which is about 210 papers, plus events, plus town hall, plus panels and so forth. I think I spent maybe 7 minutes total after it auto-scheduled, because there will be highlighted conflicts, but then you sort of juggle and dance and move things around, and it worked out very well, and took very little time. And then having things being flagged immediately as you sort of drag them around. If somebody can't be there on the Tuesday afternoon, and you just drag them over, and you can sort of see how everything propagates over. This is still very much a work in progress, the auto scheduling. There's a lot of things to fix about it as we move forward, but I'm excited about this whole area, and hopefully we can improve the algorithm here through some community work as well. So the last step is the export tab, and I'm not going to export it because I didn't make any changes, but this is already kind of live. But you just come here and you click publish, and when you click publish, it then propagates out to the web. If you want to preview it without publishing it, that's possible, but the person needs to be listed back on tab 1 under the editors. And we're going to add a viewers as well, so people can have read-only access to just see the output of the program if they don't want to deal with this whole scheduling system and so forth. And let me go back and delete that rogue session. Great. So after you export it, then it'll, if you go to programs.sigchi.org, just flat out, let me just delete this. After you export it, you'll see all of the conference information show up. And then you can sort of click in, as we showed you earlier, and see the program. Here's the conference program, for example. You can look at sessions. You can add things to your schedule, bookmark them to reading lists, and other actions. This is also completely responsive. Let me see if I can flip this over. So if you have an iPad, for example, or an iPhone, or you're holding it sideways, the whole interface is perfectly happy to be a proper responsive web application. Also will cache offline for use, and it says over here you can refresh it manually, but the first time you load it up, it will cache all the information locally, so if you have bad Wi-Fi at the conference, it doesn't need it. Bottom, you can export your personal data, all the sessions you've marked, or papers you've marked, or notes you may have taken in the app. You can export them here, and then this last link is the JSON for the conference. So no personal data, none of your data, but a JSON dump of the whole schedule and program that was created in QOALA for other people to use or do analytics on, or as they like. Let's go back here and look at WIST. So here's WIST. And we can see here, very similar. And for us, we can, for example, we can go look at the awards. Award papers are nicely marked. They also appear in the main program as well, with the honorable mention or best paper tabs. And of course, as I mentioned before, things added to your schedule or your reading list will appear. They're nicely highlighted of the things. You know, in this case, it was the first paper and the last paper in the session I was trying to bookmark, and so you get a nice little visualization of that as well. And so that is basically it. This is the SIGCHI Progressive Web App and the QOALA system that generated it. And I am the SIGCHI VP of Operations. So happy to show this to you, and we'll be using this moving forward for all of our conferences. The native apps that are in the app stores will be, they're already on sunset, so to speak, and will be deprecated fairly soon as we move to this for all of our conference program needs. One other benefit is this saves the conferences themselves from making web programs, because this is in effect the web program. So at the very least, your web chairs will also be very happy to be removed of that arduous duty of making a web page with the program on it as well. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Numerous ways of doing so. If you go to SIGCHI.org, easiest way is you can look up the executive committee, or just scroll to the bottom and click contact us, and there's some emails there for contacting any of us. Thank you so much.